Resident Evil 7, Capcom's first take on what a first-person RE experience would look like, where we play as Ethan Winters, who is searching for his missing wife, only to find out there is a much darker evil behind this whole situation. Along with that, I also had the 4 different DLC packs to cover, which contained a bonus 21 trophies on top of the 38 that came with the main game. Some that are pretty fun and unique, and then others that just made me want to rip my hair out. And this is going to be one long and tedious grind. Let's jump into this madhouse. Welcome to Resident Evil 7's Platinum playthrough.
Don't you worry. It's a whole lot worse than it looks.
The game starts us off with these videotapes recorded by a woman called Mia, addressed to her boyfriend Ethan, who is our main protagonist of the game. The first being quite sweet and heartwarming, but then the second one takes a much darker turn as she warns him to not come looking for her. But just like any boyfriend would do, Ethan heads out to find her as we arrive in Louisiana, since she's been missing for 3 years. But it also pops our first trophy of the game. Okay, 5 minutes in and already a trophy popped? Alright, I'm feeling pretty good about this. As we take in the beautiful landscape that surrounds us and get spooked out by the locals, we actually find Mia's belongings as we inspect her ID, which also gives us the AHA trophy. So with proof of her being here, we enter this derelict and abandoned looking house, and it is all types of nasty. But hey, at least dinner's almost served.
Fuck!
As we search around the house, we find a videotape. This shows a documentary series presented by these 2 dudes called Peter and Andre with their cameraman Clancy. After breaking into the same residence that we just did, where there were possible ghost sightings, Pete gets split from the group, which we then find him later on mutilated, but by an unknown source. These tapes are important because they show us the way forward, but even more importantly, once we find all 4, we will get a trophy for it later on. Now, believe it or not, we actually find Mia pretty early on, but she doesn't really seem herself. I mean, it's a fair enough response if she's been missing for 3 years, I guess. Okay, maybe not enough reason for her to launch an attack on us, as she seems to be possessed. Somehow Ethan can really take a beating. She even whacks out the chainsaw and slices Ethan's hand straight off. But that doesn't stop him from defending himself against her, as he seemingly kills her before closing an open door by mistake, luckily unlocking a trophy. We then attempt to make our escape, but things don't quite work out. These are the Bakers. You got Jack, his wife Marguerite, their son Lucas, and then the grandma, who looks like she hasn't got much life left in her. After Ethan refuses to eat Marguerite's deliciously made dinner, this sets the family off as they storm out. Okay, maybe I was wrong about the grandma. Oh, I do not like the way she's looking at me like that. Managing to sneak our way out and past Jack, also picking up this lockpick to open up this drawer, unlocking the Master of Unlocking trophy. We then answer a phone call by a woman called Zoe, the 5th Baker family member. She's actually somewhat sane and demands that we escape the house through the main hall since she wants to help us. Then shortly after, we are found by this deputy who, fair enough, seems a bit suspicious of us. And although we asked for his gun, or why he would give it to us, he ends up giving us a knife instead, which does come in handy for 2 reasons.
A fucking pocket knife?
Firstly, for popping the He's Here, There, Everywhere trophy for destroying my first Mr. Everywhere statue, which acts as one of the 2 main collectibles of the game. Then secondly, for us to gain entrance to the garage, but sadly the cop isn't much help after that.
Hey, put that door back. Put that door back. Wait!
Ooh, that's gonna leave a mark. Luckily his gun comes in handy though, as we hit Jack with a few headshots, stunning him long enough to jump into this vehicle. And of course, coming from someone that doesn't legally have a license, I ain't taking full blame for that crash. Jack then somehow survives it because he would rather go out on his own terms. So now that he's out of the way, we can now go up and grab the Ox statue, which we can then use as a key to gain entrance to the main hall. After receiving another call from Zoe, we now need to find 3 different dog head pieces that will unlock the exit. Now you can find the first 2 pretty quickly. You get the first one for repairing this grandfather clock, and then the second one you can find in a book up on the 2nd floor. But then the third one is a little bit more difficult to find. But hey, at least there's this secret passage I can use. Sadly I don't have the items to use it at the moment, but I can use the wrong item on purpose and get the trophy Nice Try. We then find our second videotape of the game, where it shows Mia trying to escape from Marguerite back when she was somewhat normal. Now this is a pretty short one, but if you manage to complete this entire videotape without being seen by Marguerite like I did, you can obtain the Can't Catch Me trophy. Weirdly, after escaping Marguerite, we then get ambushed by Jack. Clearly a bullet to the brain didn't put him down. So we managed to escape to a part of the house where he doesn't actually follow us to. We do some more searching around as we find these things called psychostimulants, which pops yet another trophy for us. We run into our first enemy type of the game called Molded, which then I did manage to block its attacks, unlocking the Arms in the Air trophy, and then for killing a different enemy with a knife, giving me the Things Got Personal trophy. We then delve deeper into the basement as we spot the 3rd dog head, but it turns out that Jack wasn't really dead, as we get thrown into yet another boss fight with him. Now, being stuck in quite a small area with him, it doesn't really give us much breathing room. So to start, your best bet is to use these punching bags to stun him, therefore giving you a chance to land some bullets on him. He'll then go to grab this pair of gigantic scissors. which you can also sneak your way past him and grab this chainsaw to level the playing field. Good thing my reactions were on point though, as I managed to crouch under one of his attacks to get the Duck If You Love life trophy. Now there isn't really much more to the fight, so after a few deaths and attempts later, I stunned Jack enough to chainsaw him to death, hopefully putting him down for good, thus retrieving the third dog head and unlocking the door to the backyard. So we make it to the caravan, but Zoe is nowhere to be seen. But after another quick phone call from her, our next task is to find some sort of serum which will help save both Mia and Zoe. But unfortunately we now have to get past the mother, that being Marguerite, who is somewhere in the old house. Now her thing is that she's a fan of bugs. As you can see, the house is fairly infested with them. So as we are looking around for some items to help us, like this backpack that improves our inventory space, and then using my knife to slash my way through these spiders to open this cabinet, we do find these two parts that can be combined to make a flamethrower, which will prove helpful. We then run into Mia again, but she quickly gets kidnapped by the son of the family, Lucas. I mean, last time I saw her, she did cut my arm off, so I wasn't in any rush to save her. Now, because of the progress we just made, we run into Marguerite herself, and the game does want you to sneak by her without being seen, but I chose to go a slightly different route. So before I did that, completely by accident, I somehow killed 2 enemies with 1 shotgun shot. I mean, pure luck if you ask me. And then whilst fending off those bugs, if you do manage to do enough damage to Marguerite, you'll actually make her run away, which I did just that, unlocking the Back Off Mrs. B trophy. Now she's out of the way, we can progress forwards as we open this box containing some sort of specimen, with the notes on how to create the serum, which requires a cranial and peripheral nerve. Now supposedly Zoe has the cranial part, so we attempt to search the second floor of the house to find the second part. But it's locked, and the only way past that is with Marguerite's lantern. So as we attempt to track her down, unfortunately there was no getting out of this. We end up running into her in the greenhouse, but in her more mutated form. Now this boss fight can be easy to get past as long as you're aware of where Marguerite is, and she hides up in the attic and pounces on you if you're not too careful. And there is also a trophy you can get by shooting her while she's mid-pounce, but I was more focused on staying alive, so we'll get that in a different playthrough. So it wasn't too soon until I put her down for good, gladly, because this is one disgusting ass looking lady. Now with the lantern in our possession, we access the second floor and find the first part of the serum, that being the D-series arm. Then after making it back to the caravan, undiscovering the secrets of the old house, there appears to be no signs of Zoe again, as we find out she's also been captured by Lucas. So with 2 family members down, it was time to take out the third and final one. Lucas instructs us to return back to the dead sheriff, who after getting our hands just a little bit dirty, we find the snake key, which will give us access to a couple more rooms upstairs in the main building. As we explore, we find yet another videotape, and then the first out of 2 key cards that will allow us to access Lucas's funhouse. But before we do that, we play that videotape, which has us play as Clancy whilst we navigate our way through this birthday puzzle. There are quite a few steps to this, but the main thing you need to know is that if you complete it in under 5 minutes, you can obtain the Out Before Dessert trophy. I managed to get this on my second try since you can actually replay those videotapes, so it didn't take me too long to get. Shortly after that, we did manage to find the second keycard, which now gives us access to reach Lucas. And oh boy, how sketchy this area was. Mainly because there are trip mines everywhere. Pretty sure I did manage to avoid most of them, but hey, we can't all be perfect. Then after inputting the right code to this door, we actually find ourselves in the same place as that last videotape was. And obviously we don't want to end up like Clancy. So the way of avoiding this is because we already know the 5-letter code to this door that grants us access to the valve handle, we can actually light the cake without the entire room being engulfed in flames. Then after a last ditch attempt to try and kill us with this explosive, we narrowly avoid that too. Now Lucas, I see you trying to be sneaky there. Noticing that Lucas ran off, we managed to find both Zoe and Mia tied up. Then after releasing both of them, Zoe attempts to make the serum that will cure them. Nothing is as easy as it seems, as we actually get ambushed once again by Jack Baker in a much more mutated and molded form. So it's time for yet another boss fight. With 2 different levels to this fight, Jack has multiple weak spots that you can destroy, in which they can be quite tricky to find all of them, hence why it's good to keep switching levels so you can have a better chance of shooting them. Overall, not a particularly hard fight, and because I have plenty of heals on me, I managed to first try this boss, but in the expense of using one of the serums to stop Jack. So I guess it's even more awkward now for when we meet back up with Mia and Zoe, as the game makes you pick which one you want to save. Now the obvious choice is Mia, you know, being our wife and everything, but I wanted to see what happened if I went a bit rogue, so I ended up saving Zoe. Just remember this, Mia, that's for sawing my arm off earlier. Now, unfortunately with that decision, things don't really go according to plan, as Zoe gets turned into some sort of stone, whilst the 2 get flipped into the water. We then wake up to now having control as Mia, Escaping from the Baker family home unlocking that trophy, we do also find Ethan unconscious though, but he soon gets taken by more of this black mold. As we venture further into the ship, we start having visions of what previously happened, since we end up finding many of the crew members dead. Now, the cause of all this was coming from this little girl called Evelyn. She demands us to watch this old videotape, which was in fact our fourth and final one, unlocking the Be Kind, Please Rewind trophy. This then takes us back to when Mia was originally on the ship, along with this guy called Alan Droney, where they had been assigned to serve as Evelyn's parents, so they could transport her to a different laboratory, since all this mold business had been down to her. And of course, typical timing, the ship actually gets caught in a violent hurricane, which then causes Evelyn to become unstable, infecting all members of the crew, including Alan. This then resulted in the entire ship being torn apart, with the two being washed upon the shore, which is where the Bakers actually found them. Then, as we return to the current time, we retrace our steps throughout the torn apart ship, where we find Ethan captured within Evelyn's mold, which we then free him shortly after. Then we cut back to Ethan, where one of the two different scenarios will happen, and because we ended up curing Zoe earlier, yeah, fat load of good that did, with Mia still infected, the couple get into yet another scrap just like they did at the start of the game, and the same outcome occurs. But this time, after defeating Mia, she suffers the same fate as Zoe, as she too gets murdered by Evelyn. Wow, who'd have thought choosing Zoe would have ended up with both of them being dead? Whoops, I guess I'll take the blame for that part. So after escaping from the ship, unlocking its trophy, and then retrieving our possessions, our last and final hurdle before reaching Evelyn was to get through the mines, which for the first half wasn't all that bad. But then within the mines, we actually come across the underground laboratory, which we find many different documents and papers talking about the E-virus, that being the mold, and the stages of infection that occurs. Then with the tissue sample that Mia gave us before she died, we were then able to make the E-necrotoxin, which is the solution to killing Evelyn, with clear indications that we were reaching the end of the game, since the second half of this mine area was just swarming with all sorts of molded, including this fat molded and his older brother, who did have me worried as I was pinned in this corner, but I did manage to make it out before killing them shortly after. Oh, that was a close one. Then reaching the surface, we actually find our way back to the very beginning of the game, where we first saw Mia turn on us. Now I think of it, although she is our wife, I don't really regret not saving her, but I know it wasn't all her fault. Evelyn also stalks us as we watch these flashbacks, so we managed to trap her in a dead end as we get close enough to inject the toxin. Now, realizing that she was actually the grandma this entire time, this then changes her into her mutated form, thus beginning the final boss fight of the game, and believe it or not, it's probably the easiest in the entire game. Now, with similarities to the final boss fight within Claire's playthrough back in Resident Evil 2, you just have to do enough damage to her to begin her phase 2. I mean, if you want to call it her phase 2. As we get thrown outside only to defend ourselves against more of her attacks. Then with no other way out, we get an unknown call from someone saying to use this Albert pistol. Loaded with bullets that really pack a punch more than our other pistol, we then end up defeating Evelyn and the game ends just like that. As we unlock the 3 difficulty trophies for completing the game on easy and normal, and also the Just a Memory Now trophy for getting the second ending. Well, the bad ending in fact. But then to our surprise, we were actually rescued by Chris Redfield and his team. Yeah, I'm not even gonna ask who came up with the design for him. Looks absolutely nothing like some of his previous character models. We take the chopper to safety, discarding any last remnants of Mia before being transported home. And just like that, we are done with Resident Evil 7's story. So after finishing the main story with a pretty impressive 25 out of 38 trophies, apart from a couple missable ones, I only had to grab the rest of the collectibles and then to complete all of my challenge specific runs. But before we get to that, I've got quite a big roadblock ahead of me. I'm talking about all of the DLC trophies. With 21 more trophies spread between 4 different DLC packs, I decided to start with the Not a Hero DLC, which has me play as Chris Redfield. Not the proper one, since I still believe this one's an imposter. Anyway, he gets a message saying that Lucas had been spotted somewhere deep within the mines, because don't forget, he did actually escape us just before we freed Zoe and Mia in the main story. And then supposedly already 3 of Chris's men had gone down looking to try and find him, but they have been radio silenced ever since, so it's our job to save the 3 and to also eliminate Lucas. With only 2 difficulty trophies tied to this DLC, you don't really have to go out of your way to do anything special to obtain them, as you manage to find the first soldier who unfortunately succumbs to a brutal head explosion by Lucas himself. During it, I would also come across a new enemy type called Fumers, which for the most part are invincible to regular ammunition rounds, but by using these ramrod rounds that you find, they'll pretty much die within 1 hit. Along with finding the other 2 soldiers both suffering the same fate as the first, but I'd say getting your head ripped apart from your shoulders is far worse than having it exploded. Either way, both are pretty brutal. Then after escaping the mine and reaching the research facility where Lucas has been cooking up more of these fumers, we reach his boss area where he attempts to get the jump on us, but after putting a bullet between his eyes, and for a second thinking we had actually ended this thing, he then changes into his mutated form. Now, as menacing as he looks, it's a pretty tame boss fight, with a total of 2 weak points, one being his skull, and then after doing so much damage, revealing the other weak spot on his chest. So as long as you keep away from him since he doesn't have any range attacks, that's pretty much the best way of killing him. Once you get to his second phase, he'll then start to fill the room with gas, which will start to deplete your oxygen levels, but there are refill points scattered around the room. So that's just another factor that I had to keep aware of. This didn't take me too long until I put him down for good, ending the Baker family name, completing Chris's mission, and obtaining the Mission Accomplished trophy. For the second trophy, which required me to complete this on professional difficulty, it really ramps things up. Since you only start out with a knife, then finding the pistol and shotgun towards the second half of the DLC, plus with many more enemies spawning in certain rooms and only being able to take 2 hits before dying, my main line of offense was to parry most attacks, so I then could get a decent counterattack on each enemy. You'd think with all that happening, surely there wouldn't be anything else that would mess up my run. Oh, let's just add lots of gas traps and trip mines all over the place. Yeah, that's a smart way of making me regret my decision for replaying this DLC. Then again, for Lucas's boss fight, it's exactly the same strategy, but my main issue this time is that during a few fights, I actually ran out of ammo completely. So thinking I had hard locked myself out of completing this, managing to stun him at certain points, instead of wasting my ammo, I decided to use my knife, meaning towards the later stages of the fight, I had ammo to back myself up with, which gladly that did work first time, as I killed him for a second time, fully completing the DLC and unlocking the You're the Hero Now trophy. Then for the second DLC, that being The End of Zoe, this has us play as Joe Baker, Jack's older brother, where we find a crystallized Zoe, not dead this time because the ending that we got in the main story wasn't actually the canon ending. So she does survive it, but we have to cure her out of this state. So after interrogating one of these soldiers who mentions of some sort of cure for her, we go out looking for it. Now, the unique thing about Joe is that he doesn't have any weapons, so his main way of attacking is by using his fists, since he can perform a 4-hit combo, which actually unlocks the trophy Queensberry rules. Then also without any trouble, you'll have the chance to sneak up on a few enemies, being able to perform various different stealth takedowns. So by performing 5 of these attacks, I also unlock the trophy Swamp Warfare. Now, after finding the cure pretty quickly and administering it to Zoe, unfortunately it was only half of what she needed, so upon trying to find more of it, we also get hunted down by this swamp-like creature, who for some reason just has a liking towards Zoe. The reason for that is because that's actually his brother Jack. Not quite sure how this guy is still alive and kicking, but since Ethan couldn't do it, it's our job to finish him off. After kidnapping Zoe and then getting the jump on us, attempting to send us away in this coffin, we managed to break our way free, shortly after then finding some very high-tech weaponry that will definitely fit Joe's combat style. You could say it really packs a punch. Upon reaching the end of the DLC, we get into one last scrap with Jack, so proving that we are the better and older brother, his boss fight consists of a brawl which for the most part his attacks aren't too bad to dodge and duck under. Plus being able to do some charge attacks, this will deplete his health even quicker. I'd say a much easier boss fight than Lucas's, it ends pretty quickly. As with one last left hook, we kill Jack, and yes, I can say that he does not return after this. We then cure Zoe and finish off the DLC, unlocking the Promise Kept trophy. Now I still have 3 trophies left to get, and for this I was required to play through the game again on the hardest difficulty, that being Joe Must Die. But before that I had to load up another playthrough on normal difficulty, getting the Fastest Man in the Swamp trophy for completing an extreme challenge in End of Zoe. These are just optional challenges which require you to speedrun through certain sections of the DLC. Not too difficult since you can just run through the first area and get the trophy. Then during this run I had to complete it without using any weapons apart from my fists and the gauntlets. Again, not too difficult because of the difficulty, so it wasn't too soon until I completed the run unlocking the Only Guns You Need trophy. Now for the last trophy, meaning I had to load it up on Joe Must Die difficulty. And just like Chris's DLC, you kind of run into the same issues, like more enemies, you die within 1 to 2 hits, and my old favourite randomly placed gas traps and trip mines, you know, the usual. Apart from those factors, nothing else really changes, but the handy thing that I did do was towards the late stages of it, I saved up a bunch of spears for Jack's final boss fight, meaning out of the 3 fights so far, I probably made this the easiest, since the fight was done within a matter of seconds, killing him for a 3rd and final time, obtaining the King of the Swamp trophy, completing both post-story DLCs. Now here comes the more grindier side of the Platinum. Banned Footage number 1 and number 2 combines a mix of various different modes and mini episodes that don't necessarily impact or relate to the story of the main game, but for the most part they are pretty unique and enjoyable to play through a couple of times. Unfortunately, the trophies for it requires quite a few more hours to be put into it. So let's start with, well, for me, one of the more enjoyable modes, that being the Blackjack Light Mode 21. where you have to compete in a 1v1 to have all of your cards equal up to 21, or as close to it as possible as long as it's under. Any more than 21 and you lose that round. The more rounds you lose, the closer you are to either being fingerless, barbecued, or to have your face split right down the middle. Yeah, I ain't picking any of these outcomes. You can also draw these things called trump cards, which have varying different benefits, like being able to draw specific cards, making your opponent redraw their cards, or even upping the required number to 24 or 27. You know, in case you're a little bit over. To start with the first trophy, that being Eye in the Sky, you have to win 3 different matches in a row, this being the easiest of the 3 trophies. I got it fairly quickly. Then for Card Shark and You Gotta Know When to Hold Them, you have to win both 5 and 10 rounds in a row without losing a single round. Sounds a lot more painful than it is, but coincidentally on both of my second attempts for each mode, I managed to succeed. I did kind of have fun with this game mode, so although having to retry it a few times, it really didn't feel like a slog to me. Next up we have the mode called Daughters, which takes you back before the beginning of the game, where whilst playing as Zoe, you witness the first meeting of the Bakers and Evelyn. Since as you can see they look like a pretty normal bunch, but it's not too soon until Evelyn starts to infect them. With only 2 trophies tied to this mode, it all depends on whether you get the true or bad ending. Now of course in pure Jack fashion, I mistakenly got the bad ending first. Since trying to escape from the Baker resident by using their car, you get caught by the parents and your skull caved in, unlocking the Butterfly Effect trophy. Then for the true ending, which obviously is the canon ending for the start of the game, by taking this separate route and finding one of the dog head pieces, you can use this to get to the backyard and into the caravan, where you will find Mia unconscious, escaping Jack and Marguerite for the time being and obtaining the One Instinct Survival trophy. Next up we have Jack's 55th birthday mode, and before you guys start making any old jokes, we aren't talking about me. So the main aim of this mode is to find various different food ingredients which can be either directly fed to Jack, or to combine them to fill up his completion bar before the time limit runs out. With 6 stages in total and 3 trophies to obtain, I decided to try and get an S rank in all of the stages. This can take a little bit to learn the perfect pathing to where you can combine the correct ingredients together to get the best score as possible, but you also had to do this as fast as possible. Now the final stage did take me quite a few attempts since I was making some really small silly mistakes, like combining the wrong items together, etc. But in the end I did manage to obtain the best birthday ever trophy for all S ranks in all stages. Then I had the Miracle Chef trophy to get, which required me to feed Jack every type of food and drink item, and by this point I think I was only missing a couple, so just by going through the list of food items after a few trial and errors I eventually got it. Then for the final trophy, Don't Keep the Man Waiting, I had to clear a stage with a 10-minute time bonus or higher. By playing the main House 2 stage, comboing different molded kills will pause the timer and keep it paused as long as you keep getting kills, whilst also shooting these massive Mr. Everywhere statues that can then double the current time bonus that you have, eventually adding up to having a 10-minute time bonus, unlocking the trophy. Then we have this mode called Bedroom, where we play as our good old friend Clancy again, but this time we're actually being shown some nice hospitality, since Marguerite is attempting to try and feed us some of that slop that Ethan refused at the start of the game.
I'm not eating that. It smells like shit.
The main goal of this mode is that when Marguerite leaves, you have to try and figure out a way of escaping, which there are plenty of different items scattered across the room that can be used to obtain more of the useful items that will aid us in escaping. The cool thing of this game mode, which I actually quite liked, is that Marguerite will come back at different times. And if you haven't left some of the parts of the room how they were when she did leave, like leaving a drawer open or having a painting in the wrong place, she will put 2 and 2 together and punish you for it, meaning that there was a sense of urgency to replace everything so that when she arrived, she wouldn't think anything's out of suspicion. Out of the 2 trophies for this mode, only one is missable, as you can get the Rat Catcher trophy for finding these 3 different rat carcasses scattered throughout the area. The first and second are pretty easy to spot, but the third one's actually really well hidden within the cooking pot, so you gotta do some digging around to find it. Then for the second trophy, it requires you to escape from Marguerite, since when she finds out that the room is empty, we plunge this knife into her neck, meaning we can escape through the hidden door which was under the bed, completing that mode and unlocking the trophy like Mama used to make. The penultimate mode called Nightmare has you still playing as Clancy, as we are down in the basement where it's a wave-based like mode which requires you to survive until dawn. Then turning on these compactors, over time it produces scrap which you can then use to buy any items or upgrades that will help you survive the incoming waves. Now as much as I don't mind this type of concept, unfortunately it's not as easy as just playing it a couple times to then get the trophies. As you complete and fail more runs, your score will accumulate, meaning over time you unlock other bonuses, like starting out with better weapons, more heals, more upgrades, etc. So you just got to keep playing and failing over and over until you've unlocked enough bonuses to actually get you through these modes. The first one being Nightmare didn't take me too long to get, since at the end you have a small boss fight with Jack. Then once you kill him you would have survived until dawn, and that unlocks the Dead by Dawn trophy. Then for the Night Terror mode, which is basically the same just on a harder difficulty, I saved a bunch of time just by scamming my way through using the Circular Saw, meaning I could fully complete it for a second time, then unlocking the Sleepless Indulvi trophy. Oh boy, now we are on to the very final trophy of the DLCs, and if you've platinumed this game before, you'll know exactly what's to come. The final mode, called Ethan Must Die, spawns you outside of the greenhouse where your main goal is to kill Marguerite. Now, sounds simple enough, right? Well, to reach her you must find the greenhouse key, which is located in the living room in the main building. To get to that, the game forces you to go the longest route possible, whilst you navigate your way through lots of different trip mines and gas traps, whilst also having to either kill or dodge the many different molded enemies that the game throws at you. With the molded being able to one-shot you, weirdly that wasn't the worst part of this. Whilst navigating your way through, you'll find these different tiered boxes which can contain various different items or weapons inside. Unfortunately, these are all randomly generated, meaning no run is ever the same. Plus, some of them can actually be fake, so opening the wrong ones will actually kill you in one shot as well. Having to succeed in all of that, with then the fear of dying, would mean that you'd have to redo the entire run all over again. Sounds pretty bad, right? Well, for the most part it is, and although I do agree that this is probably the worst trophy in the entire game, there is actually some strategy to it. Since you can kill some of the molded enemies with all of the different traps, meaning that you can save your ammo for the Marguerite fight, which is my #1 priority because her fight is absolutely no joke. With her fight being worse from the main game, since her area is a lot darker to try and spot her, this would mean I'd have to listen out for when she would attempt to pounce on me from above. And of course her area is scattered with even more trip mines and turrets and gas traps, which you can also use against her. But I in fact got very lucky on my final run, as I did run out of ammo completely and had no way of damaging her. So as I attempted to run away from her, upon finding one of these trip mines, my main hope was to stun her with it so I could run past and regroup. Not realizing that she was one shot, I couldn't tell you how happy I was to hear her death screech, as I watched her turn to rubble for a final time, meaning that I was done with all the DLC trophies, unlocking the Ethan Never Dies trophy. And now with all that done, I could move back to the main game and smash out the rest of this platinum. So upon loading up another playthrough, my aim was to pick up any remaining missable trophies that I had originally missed, whilst then also clearing up the collectibles, so I started to play out on the easiest difficulty. So to start, I had the Fly Swatter trophy for knocking back Marguerite as she attempts to leap at you. This trophy can be a little bit finicky since it's all about timing, but as long as you're good at tracking her, you'll be able to bait her into attacking you, unlocking the trophy. Then for the first place at the Science Fair trophy, you have to craft all 8 types of craftables in one playthrough. For the most part, it's pretty simple to do, but just make sure that you use the supplements correctly since there are only a couple of them in the entire game. Then lastly, once you make it to the ship section, you'll find these remote bombs, which are pretty handy at taking out multiple molded with a single use. The other way to use them is by letting one of the molded run at you whilst holding the bomb. This then allows you to counter with it, exploding the molded head and popping the trophy. Now onto the collectibles, where you have 20 Mr. Everywhere statues to find, 18 antique coins, which alongside the trophy can be used to unlock some very tasty items back in the caravan, and then finally the 32 different files. Now before we tackle the hardest difficulty, that being Madhouse, I had a few challenge specific runs to get through. So during that cleanup playthrough, I made sure that I made the correct choice in saving and curing Mia. Since when after you kill Evelyn for a second time, the ending shows both Ethan and Mia being flown to safety since she was no longer infected by Evelyn. This ending then unlocks the End of Night trophy. Then for my third playthrough, I had to complete the game in under 4 hours, using 3 or less first aid meds, and for opening the item box no more than 3 times. Now obviously doing this on the easiest difficulty makes things a lot easier, meaning the just get me out of here and walk it off trophies were fairly simple to get. But I mistakenly left one of the serum items in the box, and because you are forced to interact with the box before and after Lucas's birthday trap, and then later on when you gain control as Ethan after Mia's section, there is no room for error. So annoyingly I had to run through the game again, so I was extra cautious this time. Now onto my final playthrough, meaning it was time for Madhouse difficulty. As you guessed it, this was my toughest challenge throughout the main game yet, since with this difficulty the game would spawn more tougher enemies in specific areas. So I pretty much had to learn the new enemy spawns while was also managing my saves. Just like the older RE games, your saves are very limited to the amount of cassette tapes you have, so it was smart of me to save them before and after each boss fight, you know, because who would want to fight those guys again. Alongside all that, I had even more antique coins, since in the Madhouse difficulty, instead of 18 coins, I had to collect 33 for the Mad Pelicans trophy. At least with there being more of them, this helped me in obtaining the Magnum quicker, since that was my main offense against the bosses, and then pairing that with the circular saw meant I could just breeze my way through a bunch of regular molded, without even wasting ammo. So I reached the entrance to the mines where I found the 33rd antique coin, unlocking that trophy, then moving on to the final fight with Evelyn, and because of this being the easiest fight in the entire game, I knew I had this in the bag. Defeating her for a final time and conquering Madhouse difficulty with the Who's Your Daddy Now trophy, and thus platinuming RE7 with the Bio Splattered Platinum trophy. Now from my first impression impressions of the game, I will say that I did very much enjoy it. Although I do prefer the third-person RE games, I didn't mind that they went a slightly different route with the first-person element. Don't get me wrong, I don't love it, but I don't mind it. Now, with the story, I will say personally for me, it did get a bit messy sometimes. The whole thing with Evelyn and the mold and her infecting the entire Baker residence, with Jack having multiple different boss fights, which part of me still doesn't want to believe a single punch from Joe actually kills him. And then Marguerite, who only had one boss fight in which she dies her in a matter of minutes. Kind of feels like things are just a little bit unbalanced. I do know that things get cleared up with Ethan's story in Resident Evil 8, so I'll hold off on my opinion until I platinum that. With the platinum side of things, I can confidently say that this was probably my most grindiest Resident Evil game yet. The main story isn't too bad since I did expect having to play through the game multiple times to get certain trophies. Then although the DLCs were all very fun to play, the requirements for some of those trophies just seemed outright cruel. Yeah, you can guess the ones I'm talking about. Now, as always, if you did enjoy this video, please do make sure you give it a like and comment your opinions on what you thought of this RE title. Overall, I did enjoy my time, but I'd say that I'm more looking forward to jumping into Resident Evil 8, which, as you guessed it, will be my next platinum playthrough, since we are right around the corner from the masterpiece that I know will be Resident Evil 9. So until then, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.